This one's called Away from the Flock. The Lord is my shepherd, I've been away from the flock. He's made me lying down sometimes alone in Hyde Park. I've been led to the Thames water and considering drowning my sorrows and ending my soul. But I've been guided back to the flock after all these years for flock's sake. And even though I still think of death, sometimes I don't fear it. For the black sheep are with me and their warmth comforts me. We've been outsiders for so long, we should celebrate this for it's made us strong. Voices were my enemies and led to paranoia. Douse your head with oil, light it, they'd say it'll destroy you. But I'm still here, so there must be someone watching me over this black sheep at night. All that we, the black sheep, want is to be understood. Is that asking too much? So be believers in the black sheep and let us out of our pens and let the black sheep roam free.
Five years ago, I wasn't feeling too well. I was feeling really paranoid. I was really depressed. I was like in a dark hole. And I couldn't understand what was happening to me, because at the time I didn't understand what mental health was about. It just all happened to me. And my family wasn't too helpful, really. They were saying stuff like, oh, my mental health, it's my fault, But to be honest, I don't think it's anybody's fault, really. Just what nature take its course, really.
So here we are at present. The depression's lifted. I can go and do a proper job. But when the depression comes in, everything down. I just sit at home, listen to Radio 4, watch television. Letters drop through the letterbox, don't bother to open it. I get invitations for lunch, dinners, parties and everything. Just don't bother. Because I have to wash, dress up, shave. It ain't easy.
It's taken me a long time even for me to talk about certain things. But I know it's happened to me. But I still feel like it hasn't happened to me. It's happened to someone else. It's another Sue out there that it's happened to. It's not happening to me. Even though the words will come out and I will say to you, oh yeah, such and such, I've been through this, but it's not happened to me.
The first admission was really scary, and then I had a nervous breakdown and I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I was very sad. I was getting sadder and sadder each year, but now I've started to get happy again.
Recovery means something more than getting back to normal. It means moving forward into life. So in my local trust, for example, we define recovery as living as well as possible. And that provides a lot more opportunity for people to have a life that's worth living, whether or not they have ongoing mental health problems.
And recovery in that sense is often more about putting your life back together again. So despite still maybe having some symptoms of the mental illness, being able to return to work, being able to reconnect with friends, just being able to do things that give you pleasure and give you a meaning in your life.
Well, I think to be well is like going out with friends, socialising, having an independent living, doing things like going shopping, making friends, going places, going for walks, come to places like here really to meet and understand people and speak to staff.
It just means not being afraid to walk out the door and get on a bus and be around a few people, because when I'm ill, it's very, very difficult to just get out of your bed and leave your flat.
Before these problems surfaced, I was functioning in a certain way. So for me to be recovery for me means going back to that way of functioning. Things might not be exactly the same, but it means feeling confident again, having ambition again, doing the things I like to do again.
So that might be as simple as, I'd like to join a football group, but I don't really want to play football with. So we'll start with that. That's what you want to do. That's a pretty reasonable thing for a young man to want to do. Let's try and get you connected to something that brings you meaning in your life. And then, when you've done that, perhaps then you want to talk about other aspects of your life. Perhaps then you want to talk about the voices and to do something about those.
I also find that if you exert yourself and you can sort of meditate, you can have a still time afterwards, whereas if you don't exert yourself, then it's very difficult to shut out what's going on outside, you know.
Eating healthily as well, that would help. Routine, stability, so if you've never ate 3 meals a day, it might be hard, but try to eat 3 meals, and if you can eat more, then eat more.
I went to this showcase in Vital Link, just in Brixton, Sharp Team. Turn the clock back. You were in hospital. You were very clinical. Didn't take you long to get clean. Everyone's asking me, where have you been? Over the moon when discharged, your habit has kicked in by far. Hold your head up high, to fellow patients is goodbye. At one point you were cold turkey, the doctors told me. What you had was very addictive. I bet inside you felt like a fugitive. Relapsed in old ways, you were told to take it day by day. What's the promise you made me? No more babies. And quite a few people came to my table and was asking me about if they would do poetry, what inspires them to write, and what makes me inspired to write poetry myself. So I was explaining to them that it releases creative energy within me. I try to express my good and creative prospect of my energy and life into my work.
Keeping the safety barriers around me. Going to Befrienders, which is a voluntary group which cook West Indian food on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that has helped me, mixing with other people, socialising. Going to the CDP, I can go there every day. Again, you know, I get support from them as well. And going to the Cuckoo Club, which I'm now working for the Cuckoo Club, which again, it's given you a focus to go forward. And it's a job.
I'm having talking therapy now, which is good, and that's 1 hour a week with a very good counsellor. That's helping me to recover as far as I'm concerned. I've seen a psychiatrist who recommends that after the talking therapy I have something else. I've forgotten what it's called. But I do feel a lot better now and ready to face the world now than I did ever before. Whether I crash again, I don't know, but I'm a lot stronger now.
Well, I had to wait nearly more than 1.5 years for talking therapy. I always knew it was the best thing. So I would say that black people, maybe you don't like generalisation, but we're quite oral anyway. We like to discuss experiences immediately, but we don't get offered that opportunity. Why, I don't know. Because it's been very useful for me. I've only had about 4 sessions of therapy so far and they've been really useful.
I mean, you get to know good doctors and bad doctors and good nurses and bad nurses, but you get good ones, but then when you get a bad one, it knocks you into, like, you don't trust anybody, you know. I know it's a job, but, you know, some people go into it and it's like, they see it as just a job. They don't, you know, they're dealing with people's lives as well, you know, sensitive people's lives.
And then I thought to myself, as an auditor, when I work for industry and commerce, if one of our customers came in, who provides our bread and butter, our sales, we wouldn't treat him like that. When a customer or even one of our sales people, oh, yeah, come in, sit down, what we can do for you.
And the key thing that I notice is different in those services, which people come into in crisis, is that the first communication onwards really clearly sends a message that change and growth is possible, that this is not a meaningless relapse of an unpreventable mental illness, but rather an opportunity to take stock, to find a point of consolidation and then maybe strike out in life in a new direction. And these can be profoundly hope-inducing in a time of crisis. So even at a time when someone has lost the ability to cope with their life, there are things that can be done differently than sending messages of this is a long-term mental illness and treatment compliance is the thing you need to do to stay out of crisis.
Being optimistic instead of just saying that, oh, you're going to be ill for the rest of your life, because that makes you feel down then maybe you take on the personality of being ill. But if you decide that there is a way to recover, then more than likely you will recover. And that's what I believe, that I will recover.
Yeah, I think it's just the making assumptions, I think, is the main thing. I think it was after I split up with my partner that I think that was when I first came into the service, because I was in a bad state anyway. So that just kind of, topped things off. And I spoke to various people and I explained what had happened and how I was feeling and stuff like that. And they seemed to sort of end with, don't worry, you'll get another girlfriend, And I was thinking to myself, well, I have not thought about that at all, I thought about feeling really guilty, and ashamed about letting someone down, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about lessening the shame and guilt and trying to somehow get over making someone who really cares about you, making them almost hate you.
I've been to psychiatrists and psychologists, and they sometimes tell me, oh, you must make an effort. You must pull yourself together. Now, am I such an irresponsible person to give up my job, to get rid of my house? If you ask my peers, I am a success, right? So that's sort of a business.
And do you think that it's sort of said that other people perhaps experience more stigma? Do you think that's any worse coming from a black community, or is it the same for everybody with mental health problems?
And it's something that a lot of families desperately don't want anybody else to know about. I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday about exactly the same thing. She's having a family summit today because the family just do not understand and will not understand that she's doing her best. And it'd be a lot worse if she wasn't, doing what she was doing. And I think the issues around BME is more about control and, so you're quantified, people know what you're doing, sort of thing. I think the powers that be are quite afraid of black people anyway in this country. So black people who might be unpredictable are even worse, So the thing that people think of is, well, let's make sure these people don't pose a threat or a danger.
One of the key findings that's come out again and again is if you're a young person getting your first mental illness, if you're white British, you're likely to come to the services through a arranged appointment via your GP and come in quite a cool way, if you know what I mean. You sort of come in, there's no panic, there's no rush, you turn up, you have your assessment. If you're a young black man, you're much, much more likely not to seek help early and to wait until there's a crisis. And so the police are involved, there's emergency accesses through A&E, which often is at the wrong time of day to do things calmly or rationally. So the system, in a sense, conspires, do you see? And there's a very interesting finding that you're far more likely, if you're a black family, to call the police in an emotional crisis than a GP, which is really odd. And it reflects, I think, something to do with the way society is made black people feel about being here and about what mental illness is and so on. I think we have a huge job to do to get past that stigma.
I think you could go to a doctor and say the same thing if you're black and you're white, and you'll get a different diagnosis, or they may put you in hospital if you're black, but if you're white, they may just give you tablets and tell you to recover outside. It's kind of distressing to see a lot of, black people in hospital like that suffering. It is quite distressing.
I mean, one of the things that I often try as I get to know someone who I'm working with who comes from BME community is I'll ask what it's like for them sitting down often I'm sitting with a young black guy with a sort of white, middle-aged, middle-class looking man and what that's like. And for some people, that goes nowhere. It's like not a thing of interest to them because they want to talk about their things. For others, it provides permission to say, well, actually, it's quite hard. Because I kind of think some of the things I say, you don't have a really useful discussion, because I can say things like, how can I be helped to understand? What would be helpful for me to know to better understand? And so that's about connecting with the person in a way that is using cultural difference as a point to connect around rather than a point to avoid.
You can't assume that because somebody's of the same ethnicity as you, that you will get on with them. Do you know? Even if they understand where you're coming from, you still might not get on with them. There still might be a barrier in between in your your professional relationship. But there's definitely advantages. There's definitely advantages, I think, in terms of that person understanding maybe certain aspects or certain things about your culture, which you don't have to explain. But it's a very thin, dangerous line there, because you might assume because everybody is of one ethnicity, be it black, that everybody needs the same treatment. Everybody from that ethnic group needs the same treatment, and you would be wrong. You would be wrong there. So I just think you need to just approach everything on an individual basis.
There is now a desire within mental health to begin to transform our services, to begin to deliver our services in a more recovery-oriented way. And I was just wondering, what advice would you give to mental health professionals who really want to begin that journey for themselves?
Start where the patient is starting. Maintain hope. Do everything collaboratively as much as possible. So if you're developing a care plan, don't make it that you write the care plan and hand it to the patient. Far rather, the patient writes the care plan and hands it to you. Now that's a tall ask, because sometimes the care plans are complicated and there's some technicalities within them. But at least do it together. At least take the time so that everybody is knowing why a particular... If you take it as simple as pills, if you're going to prescribe a medicine for someone, for goodness sake, let them understand why you're doing it, what the side effects are, and if there's a choice, have a choice. And we all agree that's what we should do. And I think if we did more of that, there'd be less of the sort of tension that there is between mental health services and service users, I suspect.
You've got to listen to your patients. If the patients are taking tablets, you're not, as doctors or nurses, you're not taking the medication. Your only assumptions is of what it does to someone else. Oh, we'll give her this because it will make her calm her down. But some of them, it makes them drowsy. They can't do nothing even if they're at home. So it's really making sure that certain things do work for people and listening to the patient and really look at their background, understand who they're about, not just the medical side of it and why and things like that, but to be listened to.
I think in this country, because I've had like God and the devil kind of stuff in voices and stuff like that as well, and I've been reluctant to say it to psychiatrists, because in this country, if you start talking about that, that in a so-called third world country, they take more spiritual things into account, whereas in this country they don't, and the Western world they don't.
I think that the spirit and the soul and understanding it and being happy with it is a big part of your recovery. So I'm not sure a lot of service providers want to get into that area. I think maybe it's too much for them, so they go sort of, from the book. Are you a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, And I think they're a bit nervous about getting into areas which are sort of unregulated. And when you start talking about spirituality and stuff, it can get a bit dangerous.
I'd like them to consider alternative treatment more, like give it more value, give alternative treatments more value, and not just shun other alternative treatments and just think that it's orthodox medicine that is the best, because it can't be, otherwise I won't keep on relapsing. And the only way that orthodox medicine works is if you take it continuously. So that means that you're not healed. That means it's just being covered.
People might want to access, again, non-traditional services and support, things that they recognise helps them in their recovery. One thing I always think of is things like going to yoga. People would access relaxation groups in the ward and might find that really beneficial. And they might want to sort of go and then spend sort of a week weekly visits to go in to do some yoga to help with their relaxation.
I actually think many people working in the system have of something somewhere has gone awry, that we're ending up using coercion and compulsion, and that wasn't why we came into the mental health system. We came into the system to help people, to support people, and often for very personal reasons. I mean, many workers in the system have personal experience or have cared for people with mental health problems, and that's been a motivator for them to work in the system. So oddly, I think a recovery agenda is just as liberating for the mental health workers as the mental health service users. And I think that's one of the exciting points of partnership, that it allows all of us to do what we want to do. For people using mental health services, it allows them to get on into their life. For people working in services, it allows them to really make a difference in a way that they can go home at the end of the day and think, gee, I made a difference today, and that's very exciting.
Well, what they have to ask is that call the mentally ill person and sort of say to them, right, is there something we can do for you to make your life better or help you to cope with this? Well, as I have difficulty in I get up in the morning and try to cook my breakfast and food and this, that and the other. So I went to this clinical director and said to him, can I come as a day patient to your hospital, have breakfast, have lunch, have dinner? I don't want to stay, I don't want to take up a bed and then go home because I just can't cope. Go to the shop, buying things, cooking, cleaning. He said, no way. That's the least thing I thought they could do.
Well, as soon as you arrive at the hospital, the power is taken from you anyway, because they give you industrial hard medication. What changes the body, changes the chemistry in your mind. So straight away, I feel that they do damage, because the first thing they should do is give you some counselling sessions, probably give you a cup of tea, welcome you with a cup of tea. But as soon as you step through the door, with me, as soon as I stepped through the door, they answered my name and wrote my name on a piece of paper and gave me 2 blue tablets.
What we've learned from the research is that we can now identify what a really good recovery-oriented service would look like. From the first point of contact, people would be treated respectfully, and quite specifically, a value will be communicated of hope. So, for example, it's very likely the first person someone meets in coming into a recovery-oriented mental health service is someone who's got personal experience of mental illness, who has themselves experienced recovery, and becomes a role model of hope and the possibility of recovery for the person who's new to the service.
Definitely, that's most definitely, because if you can look at somebody and they can say to you while you're speaking to them, well, listen, I've been through this. I remember when I was on the ward, I remember when I took medication and it made me fat, and then I stopped and it made me slim, and this, and they can share that experience with you. Someone who's been there, done it, got the t-shirt, got the hat. You're going to listen to that person rather than somebody who hasn't been through it.
Another approach to risk, though, is to support people in positive risk-taking, taking those chances to grow and develop that are needed for any of us to grow in and move on in our life. Now, if the organisation doesn't support individual clinicians to, in turn, support positive risk-taking with the people they're working with, then what will happen is the clinician will fall back on a very defensive practice where we say, for example, things like, best not do it yet, wait till you're better, as if there'll be some kind of magical point in the person's life when they're better, when actually the very process of taking chances and trying things we're not sure about can in itself support the person to get better. But that won't happen unless the organisation holds the anxiety about changing approaches to dealing with risk.
Sometimes it's just sitting down and identifying them, because sometimes you've got so much on your mind, it's hard to make sense of anything. But sometimes when you have somebody who hasn't got all this stuff on their mind, they can sit down with you and say, right, let's get a piece of paper and a pen out, and let's say these are the things you want to do. You want to decorate your flat. It could be something simple as that. You want to sort out your benefits. You want to do this, that, 3 more goals. What do you need to do to get these goals done? You're like, okay, I need to phone up this place, I need to blah, blah, blah.
And I guess for me, when I discovered the recovery literature, which has not emerged from mental health professionals, but from those people with personal and lived experience, I think it was something of an epiphany for me. It suddenly connected. I thought, yes, actually the job of services is not to fix people, The job of services is to be a support for some people at some points in their life as they find a way through difficulties, and to use the skills and expertise that are so valuable in the mental health system in the service of the person's goals.
Get a job. And just work. Hopefully get a job where I can be self-employed. So when it's retiring age, I don't have to retire and just carry on working. Might just visit the world a bit more, make books about the places I visit.
Financial stability, family, rewarding career, a holiday at least once a year. I don't want to be filthy rich, but I want to have certain little basic luxuries. And that's about it really, you know. That's about it.
Me, I'd just like to generally help myself or help others.
Have a decent geezer in my life who cares about me and takes me for who I am. But to get my place still organised. My son becoming an actor and seeing him on stage. So just to live a full life, but most of it is in the voluntary sector. And I'm actually enjoying it. I actually enjoy doing what I'm doing. So the ultimate, to live on an island and not have and have full sea around me and sand. I'm sure everybody would love that. To have a relaxation, just get away for a couple of weeks and then come back and feel kind of pampered.
I'd rather be less conscious of everything that I do, you know, both sort of physically and emotionally. Just be able to do things so that you can just sort of maybe for two, if I could get 2 days or 3 days of just sort of flowing through it, you know, without you constantly have to sort of turn around and explain yourself all the time, even just to yourself.
Obviously, I like to change being ill and being in hospitals, but to change, I like to change little things, but to change as a person, no, I wouldn't, because I've experienced loads of different things that have made me who I am. So, no.
Would my life be any fuller? I think my life is a lot more fuller now. So no, I wouldn't change anything, to be honest with you. I think I've learnt a lot more about myself and my mental health status in certain aspects, and I've learnt a lot more out there. So yeah, no, I wouldn't change.
The choir rehearses a number of times. We sang it quite a few times, and each time it just is a perfect song for how we're feeling and how we're going to manage and handle our lives and how we're going to handle and deal with our recovery as well. So the choir's now about to sing "Lean on Me."